Tabletop will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Take a look around you, human. What do you see? Actually, don't answer that. Why would I bother listening to you when I know you'll just get it wrong? You'll start naming objects and places, but that chair you're sitting in isn't just a chair. That book you're holding isn't just a book. Even the planet your kind is on the brink of ruining isn't just a planet. They're all me. Everything you've ever seen or touched is a part of me. Yes, even you vain, filthy animal. This is the opening paragraph to my debut book, The Milky Way, an autobiography of our galaxy, by me, Dr. Moya McTeer. I'm an astrophysicist and a folklorist, and I wrote this book because I want to give you, anyone who is interested in space, a view of how our Milky Way galaxy has evolved over the last 10 billion plus years. I also wanted to give you a sense of how our human understanding of space has evolved from mythology to the telescopes that we sent out of our atmosphere. I hope that you would enjoy this book. You can find it anywhere books are sold, as long as it's after August 16th. The book is called The Milky Way, an autobiography of our galaxy. People seem to like it so far, so I hope you pick it up and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for potentially reading.
Welcome back to Tabletop, everyone. Today we have something a little bit different for you. Liz, our guest today, is a middle school teacher who runs a D&D and tabletop club for her school. At first, she did it just to kind of get the kids involved, and 40 plus kids showed up and have been playing ever since. We talked today about how to run games for children, how to include kids into our favorite hobby, and also how to support people doing this kind of work. If you're interested, you can always follow Liz at LizFavtastic, LizFavtastic on Twitter.com, and I hope you all enjoy the show. Welcome back to Tabletop, everyone. Today I have such a cool conversation for you. I have brought in a guest. Liz, why don't you introduce yourself and what your whole deal is? Because one of the players that I play with suggested you because you are super invested into playing D&D with kids and making sure that you can run games with children, and I thought that would be such an interesting topic to delve into. So who are you? What's up?
My name is Liz. I'm not going to give my last name just
because...
you
probably should.
I'm a middle school teacher. I've been teaching middle school the last 8 years, and when you are involved in gaming and you've got this whole online persona, you have to be very careful about not letting your kids know you stream, not letting your kids find out your social media.
Yeah.
So I'll say I teach middle school French on the South Shore, and I'm actually transitioning to the high school next year, but I have been running a Dungeons and Dragons club for 4 years. And it has basically shaped my life.
Okay, can you talk a little bit more about that? How did it get started? What kind of...
It actually got started, I started at a new school, and, when you're trying to get to know people, you, listen in for interests. And I overheard some coworkers talking about board games.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do a board game night. And they were all talking about we've heard about Dungeons and Dragons, but we've never played before.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm in. So I started a campaign for some of my coworkers, and they started talking about it to their students. And so the students are saying, how come you're not running a game for us?
Right, yeah.
I was like, well,
Like,
okay.
this is our cool thing.
Yeah.
Back off, kids.
So, we started talking about it. I got one of my coworkers to agree to run it with me. And in 2018, we started the Dungeons & Dragons Club at my school. We had 42 students at our first meeting.
That's amazing.
And I was just like, oh my God, like, this is bigger than our sports teams. This is ridiculous.
And just as well funded, I bet.
Oh, you're funny. And so I, took a picture of all these kids in the library and I sent out a tweet because, specifically my students were like, oh, well, Matt Mercer's done this and he's done that. And like, we want to use his homebrew stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so I send this tweet thinking nothing of it. And within hours, my phone is just going crazy because Matt Mercer replied to the tweet. Mike Merles retweeted us, all of these big industry names. And I'm just like, I need to teach my lesson right now, but my phone is going to vibrate off the table.
Yeah.
I checked the analytics today and it was like 115,000 views. And I was just like, no pressure.
So like what does that look like when you're kind of semi-aware that you are going viral while teaching a class? That sounds like my absolute nightmare.
I mean, it was exciting.
Yeah, totally.
I was excited for the kids more than anything.
Yeah.
The more I've done this, the more I've learned that, D&D was an escape for me when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. It has turned into so much more for kids these days in terms of, I hate to use the C word, but, COVID has really created a disconnect.
Yeah, totally.
Kids were out of school. I think my current 8th grade students, they haven't had a real school year since they were in 5th grade.
Yeah. I was thinking about all the people who are like graduating college or graduating high school and the fact that they did not have a normal like latter half of that experience. And that's just like really sad in a lot of ways because it's just like that's not coming back. That's taken forever. Yeah.
It is. And, middle school is such a crucial time in learning, like navigating the social sphere, learning who your friends are, what your likes are, your dislikes, and making those connections. And, we ran for 2 years or a year and a half, and then the world fell apart. Mm-hmm. And, I tried my hardest to keep the club going online. Yeah. But even then, I had students without computers at home, without the internet at home. I had students for whom, our weekly club meeting was the only time they interacted with their peers. And it was tough because, I'm struggling on my own. Mm-hmm. I live by myself. It's COVID. You're in this little bubble and you want to keep going for the kids, mm-hmm. but it's that fine line. I think we kept it going probably 2 or 3 months after school shut down. And then it was just, you as a teacher, you get into all these legal gray areas about mandated reporting, what we're seeing in the background. And we were just like, you know what, it's too much for now. When the school year started back up, we were hybrid, mm-hmm. and we were able to get clubs started again, and get everything going. And, thankfully, this past year, it was business as usual.
Yeah, everyone's back.
Everyone's back, whether they like it or not, and a lot of them did not like it.
Yeah. But so can you tell me a little bit about the actual playing of the game? So for me, I have DM'd and GM'd a bunch of different games, and when I'm building something, I'm thinking, okay, my players in the most part are rational people, and they are going to be able to like handle information and be able to process it, and then they come out either as storytellers or whatever they want to do with it. They're going to process it in that way, so I can kind of predict the trajectory a little bit of what's going to happen. Obviously things go crazy all the time, mm-hmm. but with kids it's just completely, I imagine, chaos all the time. Or are you able to kind of shepherd them into really investing themselves in a story to make it like I don't know, manageable, I guess?
I learned very quickly that long-term campaigns are not their thing.
Yeah.
First of all, I mean, you're an adult who plays D&D. You know how hard it is to get the same 5 people in a room on a regular basis.
Scheduling, the ultimate bad guy, yeah.
And so, on top of that, we're working where, kids have to be picked up, they have to have a ride, they've got other commitments. So you need to be flexible.
Yeah.
I started... one thing that's been great is that the online D&D community, the online TTRPG community, once you say that you're doing stuff for kids, they're the most generous people on this planet.
Yeah, totally.
And so at the time, I was in a group for DMs for the Adventures League. I was reaching out saying, like, I need super easy modules that kids can come in and out that are easy for student DMs. Because, my students at the time, none of them had ever DM'd.
Right.
And I can't DM for 42 kids. So people were just throwing Google Drives at me, you know, like...
Here, take our IP.
Take everything, yes. Go to season 7 and then play this game, do that game. So it needs to be surface level.
Right.
They don't have the attention span.
Sure.
They don't take notes.
Yep.
They honestly, D&D is so complicated. They don't know all the rules.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, you were talking about Matt Mercer and Critical Role and things like that. A lot of the campaigns that are attracting a bunch of people into the medium are really rules light or homebrewed in a way to make it accessible to either the streaming audience or a podcast or whatever it is. So I imagine they come in, they're like, a perception what?
Yeah. Yeah. Or, they're like, I saw this game on Stranger Things.
Yeah, right.
And, the perception that they've gotten is I'm a guy and I beat up monsters.
Sure.
And, for me, I'm a role player.
Yeah.
I put my heart and soul into my character and we cry and we laugh and the kids are like, but I want to wear his skull.
Yeah. I'm
like, okay. So it's a lot of...
This game is set in Hot Topic.
Yes. I mean, middle schoolers are murder hobos.
Yeah.
That's the long and short of it. They approach things in such creative ways that, yes, it's the classic, we play Lost Mines, and the first thing they do, they turn into the room with the wolves, and they're like, we want to pet them. And then they roll a natural 20 on their animal handling, and you're like, well, I guess, okay.
I mean, if I'm going to be 100% honest, my first character, Bill Stabums, the rogue, was very much like that as well. A way to just completely release my id and be like, okay, I do this, and I've rolled so well, you can't stop me. And I feel like that must be like so important for the kids right now too, because in a way they've been so restricted by like COVID or just the world and the climate kids grow up in today. It's like very monitored.
Yes.
And so being able to completely express themselves in a very free way must be really good for them, I guess. Have you experienced a lot of people coming out of their shells, kind of developing new, friendships, skills because of this stuff? Or
I have done so much matchmaking. Like, I am the friendship guru. A lot, especially as the years have gone on, I get emails from parents saying, Bobby doesn't have any friends.
Right.
We're hoping by coming into club, he's going to make some friends. Or, I'll get an email from a guidance counselor. And, a lot of these kids I've had all 3 years, I know who's good with what and being able to sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just social manipulation is what it is. Like two of my students who both started in 6th grade have been dating for a year, and it just like makes my heart melt. And hearing about we started inviting this kid to eat lunch with us. It started off as a bunch of kids just playing games, and as club has gone on and I've dove more into sort of the TTRPG scene, like it's become so much more, realizing that I'm not just running a space for kids to play a game, but they're learning social cues, they're learning how to interact with their peers. They're learning how to express themselves.
Yeah, I read an article, and I've said this in a past episode somewhere, that, and it's something that really stuck with me, that the way the mind works, and memory specifically, is that at the end of your life, when you're looking back, the way memory is processed is that it doesn't evaluate things based on reality very much. And so you can look back and say, oh, wow, that time where me and all my friends went through the mines and found that Goblin King, and I stole his knife and someone else like gave him a swirly or whatever. Like, that is going to be just as meaningful to you, and you'll have the same emotional connection to it as a real moment in your life, depending on how emotionally fraught that memory was. So it's actually like so important, and I think that a lot of people kind of discredit that what we are doing is not only playing a game and expressing ourselves that way, but we are actually training ourselves and making memories that we are going to have for the rest of our lives, There's
one moment that always stands out to me from the first or second year. I had a group of all girls that I was running a game for. And, in class, these were girls who were very quiet, didn't really talk a lot. But, when we sat around the battle map, it was a whole other thing. And I just remember one of the girls was playing a cleric of Timora.
Yep.
And she asks to commune with her god. I'm like, okay, you want to talk to your god. What's the first thing you say?
Sure.
How do you make that connection? And she looks me dead in the eyes and goes, what's poppin', Timora? And I was just like, okay, this is how we're gonna play it.
Amazing.
And it's just, like those little moments. Like it was such an inconsequential moment in the game.
Sure.
But it's that little moment she made her own, and I was just like, I'm so horrified but proud of you right now.
Yeah, right.
And for, the hundreds of hours of games I've run for these kids, like, that's the moment that stands out. Like, she took ownership of her character, of her moment, and she threw herself into it. It was just a beautiful thing to see.
Have you also found, because I've, just in my own sort of game life, I guess, I have been able to use D&D and other TTRPGs, either as a GM or as a player, to kind of express different parts of me that I usually feel like I don't get to. One of the reasons why, this is a personal pet theory of mine, but one of the reasons why I think murder hobo campaigns happen is that people don't feel like they have a whole lot of agency in their life. And so when they are put in a game world where they are, the heroes, and honestly, if they are stopped, the game ends.
Yes.
Then there's a feeling of like, I get to express all these things that I always want to do, and I have this power and this agency. And I think that funneled away from murder hoboing and into, exploring identity, exploring ideology, exploring themselves in a lot of different aspects can be like such a really good use for tabletop games. Have you been able to see your kids doing that at all as well while you're DMing for them?
I think they're starting to.
Yeah.
Middle school age is such a
tough.
disastrous time, mentally, physically, and they're they're trying to figure out who they are. I think D&D for them is cathartic.
Yeah.
For a lot of these kids, the classroom is not a safe space to express yourself.
Sure.
If they want to start talking about all the nerdy things in their life, I'm sure you remember what it was like being a nerd,
Yeah,
I
great.
never talked about that stuff when I was a kid. It's gotten a little more acceptable, but they're still gonna get bullied. They're still catching flack from their classmates. So honestly, the club at school, it's a place to play D&D, but it's also really just a social space.
Yeah.
A place to make those connections that they can't make inside the classroom.
Sure.
Especially elementary school, middle school, they're stuck in the same room with the same 25 kids all day, and they don't get a chance to make those connections. And I think, more and more, on sort of a professional level, we're starting to see how games can be used as a tool to help kids learn how to express themselves. So, one of the things I've been doing is, I think I mentioned to you, I'm sort of, doing the legwork to start getting involved in some other things. But there's this amazing company out there called Games to Grow.
Yeah.
And their whole thing is using games as therapeutic tools, using TTRPGs as a way to teach kids about, the social sphere, how to interact.
Yeah.
And, I've been very lucky that I've been given the opportunity to do trainings with them, because that is their whole thing, using RPGs to help kids express themselves.
Yeah.
I do end up getting particularly, a lot of kids with anxiety disorders. We have a lot of players who are on the ASD spectrum, and who struggle with turn taking, patience, the idea that's not fair, that's not what I wanted to happen.
Yeah. And
D&D is a safe space for them to learn those lessons without there really being real world consequences.
Sure. Yeah.
If your character fights with another character in game, it happened in game.
Yeah.
You're not going home and fighting with your best friend over it.
Yeah.
There's sort of that idea that, what happens at the table stays at the table. But you can take those lessons and apply them elsewhere.
Yeah. I think that is so interesting to me, and I want to, I could talk about kind of the theoretical side of all of this for hours and hours and hours, and we'll probably have you on again to do another episode. But I kind of want to talk and shift a little bit into the brass tacks of, how does this work?
Oh my gosh.
How do you get these kids together? Because you're talking about teaching them role, turn taking, and the math of it and the rules, and so how do you?
The first year was a nightmare.
Yes.
The first year was pen and paper. We have 42 kids sign up. I have them fill out a sheet. Here's the classes you can choose from. Here's the races. And it was me going on D&D Beyond, using their character maker and making 42 characters, printing them out. We started off with a bunch of workshops.
Yeah.
So, okay, today we're just going to have the druids and the clerics.
Right.
And I'm going to talk to the druids. My co-advisor is going to talk to the clerics, and we're going to talk about the things you can do.
Yeah.
I would, unfortunately it's a public school, I pay for everything myself, but like I said, the RPG community is so kind, and game stores just throw stuff at me, which I'm forever thankful for.
Yeah. They're build us new customers.
Yes. So, they all had the little booklet from the starter kit that I highlighted and circled, and, but I just remember being in the cafeteria with kids everywhere and a microphone and being all right, guys, we're going to roll for hit points so we can level up. So that was tough.
Yeah.
When I bit the bullet and got a D&D Beyond subscription, that was just a lifesaver. D&D Beyond has always been incredibly giving to the community. They gifted us a legendary bundle.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah, I wept.
Yeah.
And I have a special account. So they have accounts set up that are club accounts.
Sure.
So, I'm not limited to how many campaigns I can have running, how many people are in campaigns. It just gives me a little more wiggle room.
Yeah. Especially if people are kind of rotating in and out, who can come to the club.
People are rotating in and out, who can come, but it's also, I can pop into their character sheets and be oh, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that.
Yeah.
You're level 3, you can't have a Vorpal sword. Stop trying to cheat.
Yeah.
I can go, why are you a plus 30 in strength? Stop. and so that really made it a lot easier. It was for years still complicated because we didn't have a lot of student DMs, so it was kids could only come every other week.
Sure.
Or once a month because I was running groups. And it was only really this past year that I had this trio of 8th graders who were just like incredible.
Yeah.
You know, ran games. It's the first time that I could just sit there.
Yeah. And watch.
And I was just, you know, in awe.
Yeah.
You know, these 8th grade boys who were just the most amazing storytellers, incredibly patient with the younger players, but also, you know, like, you know, they threw down their rules.
Yeah.
You know, there were times I'd be sitting there and one of them would walk in with 3 cell phones and say they're not allowed their phones anymore. Or I would hear, you've got disadvantage for the next 60 seconds because you're being a jerk. And I was just like, yes, like this is the way to do it. And it's just amazing to see, especially, you know, 2 of those boys have been in the club since 6th grade, and like just watching them grow, you know, and grow into who they are and this authoritative figure. And, you know, I mean, I teach French, and in the middle of class, someone comes creeping up to me to be like, can I tell you about the homebrew weapon I just made? And I'm like, have you finished conjugating your verbs? You have? Okay, let's talk.
That's amazing. So, like, do you have a program to, like, slowly, like, push them towards DMing? Or is it just that they had such an interest that they started learning on their own and then came to you and said, like, I want to run my own campaign?
It was the second. You know, one student started last year DMing, and just it is natural. Like, this is, you know, in your teaching career, you have those, like, once-in-a-lifetime students. And this is one of those once-in-a-lifetime students. You know, I'm following this year to the high school, so hopefully by the time they graduate, we'll have been playing D&D for 7 years. And, you know, that's when I'm pulling every string I have to get this kid a video message from Matt Mercer.
Yeah.
You know, that, like, everything I'm doing with all the networking I do at conventions, with all the organizations I'm involved in, I'm just like, I'm keeping tabs on everything everyone owes me.
Yeah.
Because, like, this kid is going to be a legend.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I want to support that. I want to be the one who, you know, 30 years from now when they're on, Jimmy Fallon's going to be a cyborg. And they're like, we've got your former club advisor in the audience. Like, I want that to be me.
And then in this world, the cyborg Jimmy Fallon's like, yeah, let's do a couple of shows where we bring on D&D DMs.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it kind of already sounds like you are pushing them towards, you know, a lifetime of D&D and, like, really embracing the hobby, which is awesome.
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so.
And so going back to when you started the club and you actually had to DM for kids, can you tell me a little bit about, like, the do's and don'ts about, like, how do you run a successful campaign? How do you set them up for success so that they can enjoy themselves? Do you have any sort of, like, because for you know, your knowledge and everyone else's, I guess, my roommate also does this kind of stuff for kids that she nannies, and she came to me and she was like, how do I play this game? Like, they told me that they want to play. I'm trying to figure it out. And, like, when she came home, she was like, yeah, it was a lot of rules. So basically I just told them, like, what do you want to do? And if they said something, I would just have them roll and I would tell them if they did it or not.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely, you know, especially when they're younger, you know, yes, the dice dictate the game, but as the DM, you get to decide where that limit is.
Sure.
You know, I fake a lot of rules. You know, there have been a few TPKs that were never TPKs because they're there to have fun.
Yeah.
You know, they're not adults. They don't necessarily understand consequences.
Also, for everyone else listening, like, this is a great rule for, like, normal tables as well.
Yeah, no. I mean, when you've been DMing for a long time, you know when the moment is right.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, they're kids. You know, they don't need to learn the tough lesson that, like, sometimes your character gets eaten by a demogorgon. Like, no.
Yeah.
You know, they mysteriously find healing potions all the time.
Their god directly comes down and heals them.
Yeah. You know, and it is.
I mean, the first time I ever played D&D was when I was like a pretty like middle school age, actually. And I only played one off because my mom was sort of one of those people who's like, it will lead you to Satan like crazy. But anyway, yeah. And then, so I was just playing randomly with this kid who I went to his house. And I remember we were in this like cave and we had been dungeon delving. And I was just like so hurt and like about to be destroyed. And I was a paladin. And I remember like my person I was playing with went down. And then I had like 2 hit points left. And like this guy like swings at me and then he rolls behind the screen and was like, how much hit points do you have? And I was like, 2. And then he was like, can you like roll for me? And I rolled, and I remember I rolled like a 43 on a D100. And he was like, your god directly, like the skies open up and like your god peeks down and is like, everyone's rezzed.
Yeah. And you know, D&D is great. D&D is not great.
Yeah.
You know, I will always remind people that there's so many more games out there.
My God.
Like so many amazing RPGs that are, you know, so much easier.
Yes, honestly, when you were talking about earlier about like the rules heavy, have you ever played Monster of the Week?
I love Powered by the Apocalypse so much. Monster of the Week. I play Masks all
Masks is
the
fun
time. But I mean, even some of the one-pagers out there, you know, Honey Heist is such a great fun game.
And I mean, and now they've been popularized too, so kids can come in and be like, I want to do that.
Yes. You know, it's their perception of role-playing games is D&D. You know, D&D is the gateway drug into this amazing world of so many other games.
Yeah.
You've got to get them in the door. You've got to get them addicted to dice. But yeah, you know, when it comes to playing D&D with kids, it's very much not ignore the rules, but, you know, like, if they want to set something on fire, you know, it's not asking them, well, what spells do you have equipped? Let them do it.
Yeah.
You know, make an Arcana check. Let it go. You know, they're not trained in perception, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? Like, focus on those 6 main stats and see where they take it.
Yeah.
You know? If they want to completely go off script, you know, like, they're kids. They're not going to know that you're making it up as you go.
Yeah, right.
You know, they're just in it for the fun.
I mean,
that's the
most adults
part.
also can't tell when people are, like, just completely improvising.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. I'm always so impressed when my DM is like, oh, you're heading into a dungeon. Let me make one up right now. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was in one of my campaigns. I've told this story before too, because I only have like 3 stories. But I was playing this like downtime episode, and I thought that they were just gonna kind of talk to each other, get ready, and go into what was one of the final arcs. And then they were like, "His sword's kind of broken. We want to fix it." And I was like, okay, well, it's a small town. There's not really anyone here because it's modern day. I was like, there's not really like a blacksmith in this town in the 90s. So you look it up on the internet, and there's one in like 2 or 3 hour drive to another town. And they're like, okay, great. And then they went there, and the blacksmith was like, this is a sword of pure silver. This is gonna be like $4,000 to fix. And they were like, damn it, we don't have any money. And then they were like, what's around here? And I was like, well, there's a strip mall, there's like a Quiznos and a Best Buy. And they're like, we're gonna rob the Best Buy. And so we went and we did this like whole thing, and I was like making it up, and like but then I started like having fun. I was like, yeah, the Best Buy. You go into the back room, you're like sneaking around, and you hear somebody talking about how the manager's trying to like squash a union drive and stuff like that, and like all that kind of stuff. So like that can be the best stuff that comes out of these games too, is just completely made up, not in the book, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, and you know, there can be so many fun consequences. I just remember playing the starter set, and they get to their first town, and there's only one place to buy armor, but it's very explicit.
Sure.
You have to show them that you're trustworthy.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're just going to rob the place. And I'm like, well, the town guards show up, and you have been arrested.
Yeah.
And we go through this whole, like, trial process.
Yes.
And I'm like, let's bring in some social studies lessons. You know?
Let's talk about the U.S. Constitution.
Yes. I mean, my proudest moment was, you know, every now and then we get a day where only like 4 kids show up.
Yeah.
So we just have a rumble.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's thrown in. It's a fight to the death. and there's a mezzanine, and one kid is here, the other kid's up on the mezzanine. He's got 30 feet, and he wants to shoot him.
Yeah.
And he's like, but how do I know if I'm in range? And I'm like, well, let's talk about the Pythagorean theorem. And we go up to the whiteboard, and we do, some a squared plus b squared.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm taking a picture and sending it to my principal.
Have you ever been like, okay, yeah, do an Arcana check. This is the language magic's written in. It happens to be French.
Yes, I should. I really should. My dream would be to one day be able to play a game in French.
That would be fun.
It would be the most challenging thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because, weapons aren't really common vocabulary.
What, you don't talk about swords and shields and maces?
No. You would think with, all that we know that swords are known for in French literature, I would have so many names for them.
The guillotine.
You haven't seen, I have a guillotine on my thigh.
I love it.
But I also remember, trying to explain the difference to my students once between, like, this is a glaive, this is that, like a polearm versus an axe versus a broadsword, and forgetting to erase the whiteboard one day and coming in the next morning and there's a note from the janitor that's just like, what? Should I be concerned? I'm like, sorry.
What is this?
What is this?
So if you are DMing for a group of kids and you're just getting started, what are the brass tacks do's and don'ts? So like we've already covered, let them do what they want.
Yes.
Don't limit them because of rules, lawyer stuff.
Yes.
We've covered maybe don't really rely completely on roles too much. Let it be a little bit more loose. So what are some of the other ones that you find are like really important for DMs that want to play with kids or run games for kids?
I mean, I think one of the big things, there's been a lot of chat online recently about just like hit points. Your big bad boss is 230 hit points.
Yeah.
Do you really need to keep track of that? Or do you wait for a cool moment?
Yeah.
Does your boss really need layer actions and legendary actions? Make it your own and make it something that's easy for you and easy for them. Remember that, like, as adult players, we read deeply into this.
Yeah.
And for kids, it's not so much.
Yeah.
For them, it's, I'm popping in a video game, I'm going to play it for a few hours, and it's like that dopamine.
Yeah.
And you want to keep it a safe place for them. Yes, their actions should have consequences, but do they really need to be that bad?
Yeah.
Do you really need to deal with a racist hero? Do you really need to deal with these deep-seated issues that, we tend to see in campaigns as adults? No,
right.
Like, keep it light and fluffy. They're dealing with the neighborhood bully.
Yeah.
You don't need to turn D&D into, a social or, like a social studies lesson. Like, you don't need to turn it into, well, these kids need to learn that, they need $3,000 to fix their sword, and if they can't do that, then the game is over. No.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Lie about your rules. Don't use dice. Like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Make it completely creative storytelling. Make it a choose your own adventure.
Yeah. One thing that some systems do really well, I think, which is one thing that I, having not DM'd for kids, would definitely suggest throwing out there as a really great alternative to failing roles, is that you never fail, you just make things worse for yourself. So, like, in Monster of the Week, which everyone's going to be so sick of me talking about because I love that game so much, but it's like, hey, I'm like jumping across this canyon, and like it's a 10-foot gap or whatever, and I jump and I roll a keep like under pressure roll, and I failed it. Instead of falling to my death 100 feet down in this canyon, just make it so that you get to the other side, the rocks begin to crumble under your feet as you hit it. What do you do?
I think the most important lesson I was ever taught, when I started DMing, I turned to my long-term DM for advice, and he just said, it's always about failing forward.
Yeah.
Yes, you failed the roll, but how can you keep the game going?
Yeah.
How can you still make it fun? How can you still make it exciting? And I agree. Yeah, if you are trying to do this wicked cool move and the dice doesn't go the way you want it to, well, maybe you like start off and then you stab yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
You know, they love that.
Yeah.
You know, they're, you know, for my kids, they're middle schoolers. They love fart jokes.
Yeah.
They love accidentally shooting themselves. You know, the sillier, the better. They love gore. They love horror, you know.
Honestly, that's something that I'm really happy to hear, because I think that one thing that you lose when you get into like air quotes serious campaigns is that sometimes that joy of just being like, yeah, I swing at someone and then I tripped and I fell on my sword and I hurt myself. Like, damn it. I think that that's just like a lot of fun, and like I'm just really glad to hear that
you know,
the kids
like,
are into
it. You know, they love, you know, my favorite thing to do when they fail a stealth roll is, you know, somebody just lets out a little in the silence and you've been given away. And they're like, oh my God, yes. You know, it's I get to relive all of the dumb stuff I loved when I was a kid. And, you know, as a middle school teacher, you sort of have to have that middle school mentality.
Yeah.
So, like, fart jokes are the way to go. But it's refreshing. It's delightful watching them explore this world and learn how to be themselves.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting, but it's rewarding.
And do you run out of modules, or do you make
Never.
your own stuff? What would you suggest if somebody's like, I have no idea where to start?
It's tricky.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, you know, Wizards produces the starter kits. Stay away from the original.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Is that the
That's
Mines?
the Lost Mines. And you know, Wizards has come out and said it's not great.
Yeah.
Some of the newer starter sets are much more well organized.
Yeah.
Honestly, I give them modules. You know, I have like a little library that's available to them. You know, they have everything that's open to them on D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I get a little hourly wage for running the club, but every penny gets thrown back into buying things. And they've just, at this point, they just do their own thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, not to put down my own profession, but education right now is so constricted by state testing and state mandated curriculums that they don't really have a creative outlet anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
And D&D has been a way for them to express that creativity. You know, whether it's writing a campaign or designing weapons, or, you know, for the DMs, at the end of the year, we ran a level 20 one-shot.
Oh, I love that. And
so they got to create level 20 characters. Originally, they were just going to go up against some dragons, and they were like, no, we're going to fight Tiamat. And I was like, are you sure? They're like, yeah,
you mean
we're going to fight.
the dragon god that kills everything?
They're like, we're going to fight Tiamat. I was like, okay. And, you know, I let them make it about 7 rounds before I just annihilated them.
Yeah.
You know, you got to let them have their joy before I get my own.
Yeah.
But just, you know, the creative tricks they came up with, like, oh, we've got this. And at one point they're like, well, this is going horribly, so we're just going to put a bag of holding in a bag of holding and let the whole universe implode. And I was like, well, shit.
Yeah, I turned the bag inside out.
Yeah.
The world ends.
And I was like, I'm going to write that down and remember that. That's really clever.
There's actually something that my group does every year, which we have a blast with, and it sounds like would be a fun year end for you guys too, where we take all the characters we've been playing in whatever campaigns, we level them up to their like highest leveled selves, and then we put them in the I always say it wrong, it's like the icosahedra dome. That's what it is, icosahedra dome. And it's basically the god Oret has gathered all the gods together to witness this kind of game of heroes where they all put bets on different heroes and throw them in this dome as their astral selves, and they just fight to the death. And like all this crazy stuff happens. Like the whole dome was set up so that different things happened each turn. Like a tower was in the middle, and we rolled one time so that like the tower lifted up, and it was a huge turtle under it that started like walking around, and like dragon turtle like annihilated everything, and like crazy stuff was happening all the time, and it was so much fun. And you might want to steal that because it's very, very
Oh, no,
fun.
that, and I hope to, maybe when they're seniors, run them through the Tomb of Horrors.
Oh,
Just,
Tomb of Horrors.
hey guys, please make 15 characters and
Yeah.
don't get emotionally attached to any of them.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to annihilate you.
Yeah, I'm about to do that for my group to the, so we just are finishing a 3 or 4 year long campaign. It's the one with Bill Stabbums in it. And so we're doing the Tomb of Bill Annihilation, where it is 300 years later, there's a tomb like dedicated to Bill has just appeared in one of these cities, and people are like, what? And only people that are his descendants. And he kind of, as a comedic thing, had like slept around the entire adventure, so there's just going to be all these weird like descendants that go in, and so it's just going to be like a weird callback adventure for all of us to do.
It's amazing.
It's very fun.
I know. I personally, when I play, I go one of two ways. I go like super serious, or I'm the character that everybody else loves to hate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do
like
that
the
too.
most chaos. I just started playing with a group, and we're doing a level 20, like, get to know each other. So I created a half-arc barbarian named Chad.
Nice. To Chad.
Who is basically like a woke himbo.
Yeah.
So, we start
A
off...
himbo character, you can't go wrong.
You can never go wrong. He's got the backwards baseball cap and the leather vest. He wears a bag of devouring over his shoulder. And we started off in a coffee shop, and the first thing he said was like, can you just let me know if these beans are fair trade?
Yeah.
Like, and they were all just like, oh my God, I hate you so much. And I was like, yes, it's my goal.
So, I mean, everything you've said so far is like everything that I wish I had when I was a kid in school. Can you talk a little bit about what people can do to help support these sort of organizations starting up in their schools, or like to support, like, can parents be like, hey, we would really love this from a school, and like contact their principal? Like, is there like ways that they can support people like you who are starting these sort of things?
Yes, reach out to, if you're looking for a place for your kid, reach out to your local children's librarian, reach out to schools. Even reach out to your local game shop and say, do you have like a kid-friendly game going on?
Right.
It's, if you're able to, if you can make some sort of donation. We are very lucky. We had people donate dice. We had parents donate like battle maps. Those
are rad parents.
I know. And don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Reach out to guidance counselors. Guidance counselors are always looking for ways to help kids make friends.
Yeah.
And even if D&D is the excuse for them to sit around a table and not play D&D, it's still something that brings them together. It's a common interest. It's something they can talk about. D&D opens everyone up to a whole community, and the RPG-friendly community is so friendly and welcoming, and, there are some places where gatekeeping is always an issue, but when it comes to kids, like...
People kind of put that aside.
People put that aside. Like I said, part of what I've done is, I'm at conventions saying like, hi, I run a club for kids. Can you give me a discount?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think a single person has said no to me.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky, running this group for kids has driven my own interest in RPGs, in social emotional learning. I started volunteering with a group called Take This. And their whole goal is promoting mental health education and awareness in the gaming community. And, through them, I get to go to conventions. I get to meet, like, all of these big name industry people. And, getting to talk to them about, like, playing games for kids and, making connections so I can get involved with companies like Games to Grow. There's Geek Therapeutics. There's so many out there who, I think, like, we're the generation, like, games were our thing when we were kids.
Yeah.
And we're at that point in our lives where we're adult professionals and we can turn around and say, you know, games don't cause violence. You know, games cause growth.
Yeah.
You know, and we're in the position where we can make those changes, you know, in society, in education, in everyday life. And that is so important so that, like, those kids don't have to go through what we went through.
Totally.
You know, they don't have to feel that isolation. They don't have to feel, you know, that otherness. You know, this is part of their life. You know, kids come to school in Hellfire Club t-shirts, you know. Kids come to school, you know, kids Naruto run through the hallways and people are just like, okay.
Whatever,
you know, like,
I don't understand it, but it's cool.
You know, and it's caused such a shift that, you know, like, kids, you know, when I think of when I was in middle school, like, you know, hiding in the bathroom, reading the monster manual, like, they don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. So...
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was like such a blast to talk to you. We'll definitely have you back on again. But before we go, I really want to ask, like, is there any sort of plugs you would like to make? Any way that people can kind of contribute to your club? Anything like that? Or if not, that's okay too.
I am on Twitter at LizFavtastic, LizFavtastic. I don't really pimp myself. I always pimp the organizations I work with.
Sure.
So at TakeThisOrg, you know, they're an amazing crew. I've been so lucky to volunteer for them, work for them. And, you know, check out companies like Games to Grow, Geek Therapeutics, you know, even... I mean, they run trainings for community members who are new to DMing.
Yeah.
You know, just reach out and somebody will answer and somebody's going to be there to help you.
Well, that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much, Liz, for coming on.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
This was a blast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Of course. I look forward to it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Tabletopped. If you're interested in talking with us, please send us an email at tabletoppedpodcast@gmail.com. Or you could follow us on Twitter at Tabletopped. Our DMs are open. If you like the show, please do the things that podcasts tell you to do. Subscribe, rate, share with friends. And if you don't like the show, may I suggest sharing with enemies? I mean, that would show them, right? Thanks again to everyone who follows the show, and we will see you next week for more episodes of Tabletopped.